elegante. Giù definitivamente.
Hello and welcome to A Day in Film. Today's film in question is 8½, directed by Federico Fellini and starring Marcello Mastroianni. So this movie has been on my watch list for a while. It is one of those classics that I've just been meaning to watch, and finally I got around to it, and wow, what a film. You know, to summarize this film, this is a movie about making movies. And it's almost in the same ilk as Singin' in the Rain, but in that film where it's a lot more like romanticized, and you know, it's not really as much about making a film as this one is. This film focuses on like the creative process of the director, and that's where I think the film really hits its stride, because it shows you just the total mental exhaustion and weight that gets put on the director when he's making and coming up with a film. And you see him with all these like coping techniques that I'll go into a little later, and it's such a great film to show stress, because half this movie is just 1,000 different things happening at once, and then the main guy hallucinating. But I mean, to summarize the plot, I already kind of did, but it follows the main character Guido trying to make a film, and you know, he's super stressed. There are 1,000 people always around him, complimenting him, criticizing him, telling him, oh, edit this, change this here, let's start filming this a couple days from now, that kind of thing. And he starts slowly molding the script around his own life instead of it being a story, you know, just because he's so stressed. And I think where the film really hits its stride is when it's in Guido's mind palace, because when you see all these crazy things he's imagining and all these random like daily hallucinations he's seeing because he's so stressed and he just needs to take himself out of an uncomfortable situation, it's just so visually unique and stunning, especially for the time. One thing that I really like about this film is the fact that it's shot in black and white, because it may sound silly, but being in black and white almost adds more color, because the shining bright white and the crushing blacks are just so expressive in what's trying to be shown. You know, and there are a lot of scenes in this movie where if it were in color, I don't think it would have been nearly as effective. And to stay on the visual aspect, the cinematography of this film is by far the standout aspect, because it is just gorgeous. It's like classic Italian filmmaking warped into this sort of meta story that I just really love. You know, it's a lot of beautiful tracking shots, it's a lot of beautiful aerial shots, it's a lot of beautiful everything shots. You know, this movie just gives you it all. And visually, it's just really impressive. And again, that lack of color almost adds more color than there would be if there were actual color. And I do have to talk about the performances, because for the most part, they're great. You know, there are like one or two characters who their performances seem bad, but that's only really because they had like 8 lines of dialogue. Because, you know, there are like 100 characters in this film. They can't all get as much screen time as Guido. And Guido especially, again, played by Marcello Mastroianni, he is such a talented actor, and he portrays this super stressed director really well. And a lot of the scenes where he has a group of people following him, he just goes like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like there's a scene where he's talking to a guy at a kind of dinner, and the guy's like, if the Pope came up to you and asked you to come up with something really creative, could you? And he's like, I'll get back to you on that, kind of thing. And he just never picks the conversation back up. It's just, he portrays that stress so well. And he portrays this guy who's going through all of this with like a mental, like mind palace cope thing really well. And seeing each character's reaction to Guido and his filmmaking style and that kind of thing. If I'm correct, Jean Rogel's character, Carini, is a critic. He's a film critic. He goes to Guido a couple times in the film to criticize the script, criticize the idea, and he even says it to Guido straight up one time. He's like, this is just turning into your life. You can't make a film about old childhood stories. And Guido's just doing it because he's lost, and that's what I think this film really does well. This film hits that burnout and that just like loss of love for something that you once did. And it reflects the actual director really well, Not that I've seen any of other Federico Fellini's films, but I know after this his career kind of took a nosedive in quality. And another thing I have to give props to the film for is for talking about what is relatively a heavier subject, that being burnout and like loss of self worth. It manages to keep the story and just tone of the movie very light. There's that whole like circus that comes at the end, and there's the clown character that Guido's friends with. But I mean, just the music in this film is really lighthearted all the time. It never really takes itself super seriously, even though it is portraying a pretty serious message really well, actually. It doesn't really muffle it, it gets it across pretty straight. I didn't have any trouble picking it up. And right now, I would normally say a spoiler warning, but I mean, this is a spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about later story details, I guess. But this film, it deserves to be watched. So if this is what it takes for you to go watch it, check out 8.5, because it's definitely worth your time. So one thing that they really focus on in the latter half of the film is this spaceship. In Guido's original script, he had a spaceship scene, and his prop master is telling him about it, and it's like, oh, this is the glass panel we'll shoot it through. This is the big, like, metal rig we have set up for it to project onto. And the spaceship ends up being an almost metaphor for the film, because it's this huge, grandiose thing. It's this huge thing that's going to propel the film up in, like, quality and just popularity. And in a lot of ways, that's what Guido's trying to do with his career. His critic is constantly coming to him and being like, oh, I kind of hated your early work, that kind of thing. And at the end, when he has a hallucination where he ends up shooting himself because the critics are asking too many questions, you see how much just making this film has changed him as a person. And another thing that he does quite often in the film is infidelity. He has a wife and he has a girlfriend as well, and you see him kind of jump back and forth between which one he really cares for and which one he kind of tries to ignore. And it shows you that this Guido guy is not a good person. His wife even says one time, she's like, I don't know how I could ever cheat on you, because you are just such a fascinating character. I just don't think I could do it, kind of thing. And Guido has like been actively cheating on his wife for like months at that point, and he just doesn't care. He's like, oh yeah, sorry. It's just a lot of little things like that in this film that really make it stand out, more than just it being a visually beautiful film. Because, first and foremost, what you see in a film is the visuals, and it's visually super impressive. Really huge, beautiful sets. You really never feel like you're on a soundstage either. Like, this is just like an open field. And, I mean, the production of the film is just great. I've criticized all the technical aspects. I mean, I guess I could say the lighting's great, but that kind of goes without saying. It's something about old Hollywood where everything is just tight. Some of the dialogue does come off as a little higher than thou, kind of self-righteous thing. But, for a film that's about the director making it, it's kind of to be expected. He manages to get it across in a pretty non-pretentious way, for the most part. But I mean, that's all I really have to say. Definitely check out 8.5. It's a classic worth watching, like most classics are. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the theaters.